So today I am going to share with you 20 years of progress and struggle in addressing problematic issues with someone so that you do not have to spend the same time that I did getting to where I did. So I'm going to include 20 years of learnings through my therapeutic training, through personal experience and exploring neurodiversity. So let's get into it. So we all know probably what I'm talking about here. We have a feeling, maybe we've identified this a little bit later, the situation has already gone by, and then we are left feeling, that person rejected me, or that person was a little bit dismissive, or that person made me feel small. But we just sort of shove it off, and we don't actually end up addressing it, and maybe then we start feeling bad about ourselves because why did I not just say it in that moment or soon after? And I know when you look around, probably you see people do this quite often, and then you think, well, why can't I do that? It seems like it should be so simple. So today I'm going to talk to you about what the things I've learned, and first we're going to get into why is this so hard for us very quickly. So for us ADHD people, there's a whole host of reasons. I'm going to just name them off really quickly. So RSD, we probably all know what RSD is, rejection sensitive dysphoria. We will go into any interaction almost expecting to be rejected, or at the very least, we're going to be fearful of it. And then that leads to emotional flooding. So this overwhelm, this emotional overwhelm, when we start feeling rejected or we start feeling just like we've got too much to process, we get this emotional overwhelm and then we can't have any conversations. And then processing speed, maybe under the best of circumstances, we do not process our emotions as well as we would like, whether that's our emotions being delivered to us like the next day. I really experienced this, so when I have real life in-person conversations, sometimes I have to do this over like 3 days and do them in 3 bits because I need to figure out how I felt about the first bit first, which is a pain, but it delivers much better results. And learned avoidance, particularly if we are sort of late diagnosed and we've just been kind of coping and finding our way through, feeling our way through in the dark, we've developed this very easy, convenient way of dealing with this. We just avoid it. And this ultimately, this provides us some sort of safety, but it's not really helping to foster healthy, flourishing relationships because we're not being properly congruent and we're not telling people when they've inadvertently or maybe intentionally hurt our feelings. And finally, we might have perfectionism. So ADHD is known for being something of a bunch of perfectionists, and maybe we don't even want to have this conversation unless it's perfect, but we're never going to have a perfect conversation. No one's ever going to have a perfect conversation. Ultimately, when our brains are put in this sort of survival, fight for survival mode, it is prioritizing just that. It is prioritizing survival, not eloquence. And that's the thing that we're going to deal with in these steps right now. So before we get into those steps, I just want to say like how shocked I've been over the years at how particularly neurotypical people do not react like us. They are, by and large, if we approach this in a peaceful, non-accusatory, non-aggressive manner, they're very welcoming and very open to being given some honest feedback of how you experienced an encounter with them. So bear that in mind as we go through all of this. So first things first, write. Writing someone a proper email, a longer form email about how you felt is not second rate, is not worse than having an actual in-person spoken conversation. If that is what you need and you don't even go any past that ever, that is absolutely fine. If you just do this first step and that is you, great, like that is absolutely fine. I stayed there for ages and I still do it to this day. So why would we write? So one, like it gives us time to organize our thoughts and we can write it over as long as we want. And in that time, we are able to regulate our emotions. So we can do this without letting our emotions get the better of us. We don't end up just getting overwhelmed and calling someone a big fat asshole because they've hurt our feelings. And this is really important, once you've sent that email, stop and wait for nothing bad to happen. This is important, just stop and just wait and see. I'm going to say almost always nothing bad is going to happen. If you've sent a reasonable, non-accusatory, non-confrontational email following all the tips which are coming in this structure here, then I'm going to bet you that you're going to have a much, much, much better encounter than you would have thought. Once you've got your reps in, so do your reps with the emails or the texts, get those reps in and just start building some confidence and some real strength in the fact that, oh wow, I've really confronted people with how I feel now. I've really stood up for myself and people have reacted really well. Then you can start scripting some spoken interactions. So why would we script? So when we're put under great pressure, our working memory goes down, our anxiety goes up, our fear goes up, we find wording much harder, our processing speed probably goes down. It's not the best outcome, it's not the best recipe for what you want to get. So you might have a script that you literally just read from, or you might just use some bullet points and you refer to the bullet points, or you practice it and you just get it down pat and you just say the most important things. It's like a paragraph and you've just recited it word for word or basically word for word. And hey presto, you have had a successful spoken interaction where you've stood up for yourself and expressed how you feel. Now here is a great tip. I love this because, as you'll see as we go through, no one can argue with this. If you frame this right, no one can argue with what you're going to say. And you can just use this formula if you want. You just need to remember 3 steps and this is going to see you right. So first step, when I saw X, or when X happened, or when you said X, and you have to be completely objective and factual here. So no one can argue with it. Step 2, I felt. Again, no one can argue with this. They could not tell you that you did not feel hurt. This is just factual. And then step 3, because I imagined. And again, no one can argue with that. If you frame that to them as, I'm not saying this is a fact, I'm just saying this is what I imagined, then that is not accusatory, it's not confrontational, and most often they're just going to be all too happy to say, actually no, that is not what I thought. I acted that way because X, and it's probably not even anything to do with you. And those 3 steps will take you from where you are now of not really addressing these things at all to hopefully being able to have some sort of spoken interaction with a bit more freedom and the ability to stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself. Now, I want you to have the best outcomes of this because ultimately positive reactions coming back at you are what's going to fuel your success here. And I want you to be best set up for success. So remember also these 3 things as you go and try this. So 1, we want to address the issue, not the person. We're not making blanket statements about how a person is bad or inconsiderate or offensive or whatever. We are talking about one specific thing, and specificity reduces defensiveness. Just imagine if someone came to you and said, oh, you're so thoughtless, you're horrible, I don't like you, or something like that. And then compare that to how you'd feel if they came and said, look, that we're friends, I know there's probably a really good explanation for this, but when you said, I really think you should have tried harder on that, that actually hurt my feelings because actually I did try quite hard on that, or there was a reason that I didn't try any harder, it's because I was having a really hard day. We're not making a blanket statement, we're being very specific about one thing. And finally, remember that if you need it, planning is going to be your defense against emotions taking over. We never want our emotions to be totally running the show here. We want to put a bit of distance between that impulsivity, that emotional impulsivity, and help us to structure what we want to say, how we actually want to say it. So remember that ultimately self-advocacy starts with structure, not with confidence. It is totally okay if you do not feel confident at the start. You will build that confidence.